everyone. Welcome to the Clear Talk Show.
Hey, everybody.
We are so excited about tonight's episode. Just to warn you guys, it is a little heavy, but we are going to have a great discussion tonight. And tonight, we definitely want to start off by thanking all of our listeners and all of our followers. And so, Carmen, go ahead and read some feedback for us.
Yeah, shout out to us. We just got to 300 plus followers on Instagram. So you guys, stay following us, stay connected, stay tuned in. I just want to read a few, I guess we can call them testimonials, just some feedback from the episode. So a friend said episode 3 is amazing and a lot of it hit home for her or him. It just says me, I don't know. And then I'm going to read this one. Oh my God. I listened to the podcast yesterday and it was the very answer that I needed. I had been so afraid to make a decision about a job, and hearing you ladies speak about God, how we are his daughter, how much he loves us, it reminded me that he's got me. Oh, he got you, girl. Yes. Here's another. I love episode 2. Such an amazing topic. Friendships and women is a major topic. Y'all did a great job of breaking it down and giving us ways to not just attract friends, but how to be a friend. Yes.
Yes.
All right, this one's a little long, but I'm going to read it. So it says, so my coworker just got to work and she told me that her little sister was having problems with her church friends and has a new girl who just got to church. Her little sister approached a new girl and now they're friends. Yay. But the old friends are jealous. Boo. Like they don't want to add new friends to the mix. So she said, I just heard something about friends, and she said you should listen to this. It was episode 2 of our podcast, of course. Her little sister is 14, so she said, oh gosh, are you listening to one of your old lady shows again? Dang. You old. Okay. Old is in the mindset. Anyways,
right.
Are you listening to one of your old lady shows again? And she said, whatever, just listen. She fast forwarded to when we were talking about friendships, and she was like, her and her little sister talked about it all Saturday morning. She asked if she can go back and listen to the entire episode. She did, and she loved it, and she is going to share it with her youth group at church. Yay!
That's so awesome.
She said it's real funny, and she can understand it. It doesn't go over her head. Shout out to you. This is awesome. So you guys keep sending in feedback.
Yes.
You can DM us on Facebook, on Instagram at The Clear Talk Show, or you can email us at cleartalkshow@gmail.com. We really want to hear from you guys. Good, bad, ugly, but really want to hear the feedback that you guys have. So
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to remind folks too, if you're just like, this is the first episode that you've listened to, go back and listen to the other shows too. The very first show, we really introduce ourselves so you get to know who we are and kind of where we're coming from. And every episode is, you can jump in wherever you jump in, but if you feel like, oh, that was good, binge listen, go back and listen to more, share it with your friends. So, because if it's blessing you, I guarantee you it's going to bless the people around you too.
for sure. And then don't be like discouraged. Someone's like, oh, it's an hour. I'm like, but yeah, you can listen to it in the car, on your way to work. You don't have to like listen to the whole thing. It might take you a couple of days. It's totally fine. It's the #podcast life. So
Yes.
It is.
I loved listening to podcasts while I work. Like that is because I always have to have like some type of background noise or something going on. And so I can listen to a podcast and even if you want to learn stuff, like I've got a whole playlist of different things. So you might be like, oh, I don't have time to read a book, but you can listen to a podcast about a topic that you want to learn more about. So yeah, join the podcast life, man. It's good over here.
it's good.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I actually listened to our last episode like twice.
Same.
And it was so good. Even though we're recording, I'm like, let me go back. I might have missed something. It was really, really good. So we thank you all for listening. We thank you for following and sharing our post and just tuning in and sharing with other people. So most importantly, we want to give a shout out to our girl, Kim, who couldn't be with us tonight, but it's all good.
We miss you. And we miss you.
Yes.
Each and every day. There you go, Kim. I sang for you.
We got to have the
for you,
music
girl.
breakdown in every episode.
And we want to also acknowledge, ladies, that it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Yes.
So shout out to all of those survivors and going through it. We're praying for you.
Yes.
But most importantly, it's also Domestic Violence Awareness Month as well. And that is what we're going to be talking tonight. So since our girl Kim couldn't be with us tonight, we have a very, very special guest and our co-host tonight. And she is a author. She is a businesswoman. She is also a wife. She's a bonus mom and a bonus grandma.
Go ahead, then.
Yeah, she has a line of things. She's also a preacher's kid, also known as PK. And she is also a childhood domestic violence survivor. And she also grew up in a domestic violence home. So that's what we're going to be discussing tonight. And so we're so grateful to have you here with us, Tiffany. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, Tiffany Mensah. Welcome to, I'm glad to be at the Clear Talk table with you ladies.
Yes, so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Awesome. So, I wanted to, of course, we want you to share your story with us. Most importantly, you're an advocate for domestic violence and you're bringing awareness. So share with us a little bit about your story.
So with my story, I grew up in a domestic violence home, and my parents were married for 30 years. And so the first time I saw my father hit my mother, I was 7 years old. And so from there, that pattern continued until I was 18 when she finally divorced him. So she left him a series of 7 to 8 different times. And from there, it wasn't talked about, growing up. It was what happens in this house stays in this house. There were neighbors who would call the police, and police wouldn't come in. They weren't successful, so they just stopped calling. So you're living with basically a terrorist in your home day in and day in and night, and you're not sure what version of daddy you got coming home today. When my mother would leave my father, she would take me or my brother, my sibling, one of our siblings, the younger ones that were in the house, and the safe haven. She would have friends who were safe havens, and so they were empathetic to her. They loved her, but they weren't as empathetic to me as the child. And it was, you're a brat, you're this. I was very isolated. I didn't want to talk. I just wanted to be up under my mother every chance that I could, because the other part of domestic violence is the isolation aspect. And so my father had isolated my mom from her side of the family. So it was just us in this house all the time. So now you take me out of my element. All I have is my mom. That's who I want to be up under. And they were trying to basically separate us. So as I started acting out, it was those seeds that started being planted, where instead of looking at the things that I was comfortable with, like in terms of writing or in terms of music, the non-mentionables, and like meeting me at that level, it was because you're not at this level, I'm gonna hit you down here. So it was a journey, which ended up turning into anger. And from anger, I started fighting. And then I started trying to create my own reality to escape the toxicity I was growing up in, which led me to a whole bunch of toxic relationships and just trying to seek protection in the arms of whoever would protect me, because I didn't feel protected at these safe havens. And then I'm at home living in hell, basically, as well. So Love and Basketball was the movie that was out at that time, and I was like, I want that fairy tale. So I'm picking these knucklehead dudes, thinking they can give me that. And it just continued to go down. It was a tumbling dominoes effect. And one of the major things was that continued well into my 20s, where I'm like, I'm not going to be like my mom. I'm going to fight back. But it was literally turning into me fighting back. So I'm dating guys that are like my father in one aspect or the other, because I thought domestic violence was just physical, when it is more than just physical. It is also emotional and financial and all these aspects that I didn't know. So each different dude had a different layer of domestic violence advocated in there. And so then once I reached a corporate status and titles, I'm like, okay, cool, got it. I am now going to control the situation, which did not turn up well, because now I'm putting on my father's role. Because I got the big job, I got the title, I'm gonna pay for stuff, I'm gonna handle stuff in exchange for your love, which is not love, because they're still cheating, they're still doing the things, they're still verbally abusive. Like, it was just a downward cycle until I had to get to the end of myself, and God brought me to the end of myself. And from there, I was 25 when I realized that I never know what a healthy relationship looks like. Like, I don't know what this model is that has, like, all these years, and started changing my life, getting back in church. And that was one of the things too, is that growing up in a church, like I'm a PK, my daddy's a preacher, is one of those, the word. So all of that, but I could not separate the humanity of this man and God's divinity. I just looked at it as, God, you're supporting this, you're condoning this, because how are you so good? And my father, who's the preacher, he just beat mama last night on Saturday, and he telling the church, thus saith the Lord on Sunday. How is this possible? Like, And we're praying for the abuse to stop, and we want things to change, but we're not seeing it right away. So I was like, no, I'm good. Now, I was also raised, it goes back to you guys' talk last week about identity. If you haven't had a good father, you look at God like that, where it was my father ruled with a fist, basically. So I'm thinking it was like, fear God, fear this. So I grew up with I'm scared of God. I don't see this loving picture of God because I see this man every day in my home. So I wasn't rebellious enough to be like, God, I'm done with you, like cursing God. But it was like, nah, I'm straight on this. I'm straight on this church life. I'm out of that. And it was, God had to meet me by keep having these roadblocks. And on these roadblocks, I was meeting people who are called my angels, that was echoing the same voice, that was basically having the same message, get back in church, get back in church. And there was finally a church that we got to after the divorce where they were the first church that made me change the way I see God and like care for my mother's soul, care for me. And that's what got me back into it. And that's when I was able to get into counseling and kind of understand those self-defeating attitudes and behaviors where, yes, I saw this, but this doesn't have to be my story. And I thought this is what my story was going to be because of what I grew up with. And so from there, it was just a journey of wholeness and like 9-10 years of counseling, deep counseling, transformation in the like transforming myself within the word of what the word says. My mom said, it's funny that this day is actually here because my mom was like, you are going to reach kids that grew up in domestic violence. I was like, nope, that's your thing. I'm good. Like, I'm not trying to revisit that. But what got me, was that it was last year. Over the years, you keep hearing domestic violence occurrences. The numbers, the statistics continue to rise. And there was a man who tied up a woman in Michigan and killed her kids in front of her and left her for dead. And it gripped my heart so bad. Like, that's when my ears start being inclined to hearing the stories of the kids. And then there was an incident out here a couple of Christmases ago where the man killed the wife, killed the kids.
Right.
That happened in my complex.
Did you know them?
Yeah.
I knew them.
You
Really?
knew them?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that happened literally 4 doors down from where I used to live. I will never forget that day. It was super sad.
Yeah. And so you just keep hearing these stories, and now you're hearing the mother was killed, and then the kid was like, well, what happens to the kid?
Right.
What happens to the kids?
Exactly.
What happens to the kids? And so I started doing this study and deep dive on childhood domestic violence. Like, why is nobody talking about this? 15.5 million kids are growing up in homes right now across the U.S. where domestic violence is happening.
Yeah.
And 40 to 50 million adults grew up in it. I'm part of that statistic. Why is there not enough resources? Why is there not enough programs that's being done? And so I wrote a book about this whole journey.
Go ahead, Dan.
And, yes. It started as my final college essay paper. And from there, it has evolved. So it's seen angry Tiff. It's seen venting Tiff. And thankfully, Holy Spirit has put his grace on it where it's now whole evolved Tiff.
Amen.
And based off of that, and sharing with my mom didn't know I remembered as much as I remembered. And that was the first time we were able to have a conversation about the effects of it.
Right.
And, my mom was like, and I had to be sensitive to it because I don't want it to be, Mom, you like a bad parent. And I don't want victims or survivors to feel like I'm a bad parent because you're not. And my mom said it best. She was like, I was just trying to survive.
Yeah.
Which absolutely, I get that. How many other mothers are out there that's just trying to survive right now?
Yeah, so that's really, really good. Before we go into like your healing process and all of that, what I was thinking about is, you saw God as that one that is like has that iron fist, right? Because your father, as you mentioned, he's a preacher. And you also mentioned before that he is also still preaching, correct? And so the one example that you had of God growing up, like that was how you saw God. He was supposed to be that example. And so I know you talked about anger, but I kind of want you to go a little bit deeper into how it pushed you away from God, and also, you know, that journey, what it looked like for someone that maybe is still trying to heal and still can't seem to connect with God.
That's good. Well, it was so music. I connected with music. So I found music that could verbalize what I felt. So as I'm going through this phase, as the divorce is happening, as things continually keep coming up between my parents and during this divorce process, I turned to Tupac. I turned to Jay-Z. I turned to whoever was the angry voice that could validate how I felt, and I put on that persona. And from there, I was also told that I would do nothing with my life but get pregnant and have babies.
Oh, see, nah.
And so based off of those two rappers right there, I took on Ego. And as we know, Ego is edging God out. So it was like,
say that one more time.
Ego is edging God out.
Good.
Oh, that is good.
Put that on the t-shirt, child.
And from there, it was, I used them as my motto. So it wasn't, I knew I was good on church. That's literally what it was. I'm good on church. So I'm listening to these songs. This is who I'm going to be. There was almost every Jay-Z song, maybe after Black album, that talked to the ego side of Tiff. And from there, that is what fueled my hustle. That is what fueled my go-getter, because no one is going to control me. And the thing about it was that my father, my mom didn't work for 30 years, so the financial abuse was there too. And he would try to still use that power and control over us, myself and my siblings. And I was like, absolutely not. So it was, I still pray. I pray before every test. Philippians 4:13. Prayed over my food, but that was it. On Sundays, I will not listen to R&B rap, but at 6 p.m., I will turn my rap music back on. That was the relationship.
Yo,
6 o'clock.
sounds like my college experience.
That was my college experience. That was definitely my college experience. And the thing about it was, I kept going like that. But in the midst of going, there's a song called Reckless Love. In the midst of that, God kept chasing me down because I was getting jobs I should not have. I had no credentials. I'm working at University of Michigan Hospital with nurses seeing patients with no degree, and that wasn't even my degree focus. So I knew enough to be like, okay, God, thank you, but I'm still not going to church. It was my mom. My mom hit a depression. She struggled with depression. And it would be, which is common from survivors and victims of domestic violence. So it would be, I remember the first time I saw my father beat her down, we would go in a room just to touch her body to make sure she was alive.
Oh my.
So it was one of those, she listened to a pastor in Michigan, Pastor Bogle. He had a nighttime visions ministry, and he would pray. She ended up going to his church after the divorce, and the way they loved on her is what brought her out of that depression, is what got her back into life after 30 years of a failed marriage. And she got married at 16. So she wanted me to go to church with her. And I'm like, I don't want to go to church with you. Why? Like, and I grew up Baptist. This church was non-denominational. So I thought everything outside of Baptist was wrong. So they singing fast songs. How is this holy? They like services and like, they're singing a different type of worship as unto God. And I'm like, this is not a hymn book. Like, it was culturally different. Why are people hugging on me? Why are you touching me? So I did not like it. However, I had enough sense to know that if my mom is getting her healing, I'm going to sit here in this row and shut up and fix my face.
Right.
Let her get what she need. But it was also God like, you funny. You think, no, I'm going to tell you. The Pastor Chris Brooks, shout out to my big bro. He preached in a way that was transparent. He preached from a way, I've always looked, when growing up, being on level with God was perfection and rules. And you got to reach all of these. And if you don't meet them, something's wrong with you. And like, I didn't know how to measure up. And then it's like, I've put this shame on myself because now I done got all with these knucklehead boys. I'm doing these things and I'm not like doing what I know the word. Cause again, I know the word, but again, I couldn't separate my daddy, Heavenly Father. So as I'm going with my mom as support, Pastor Brooks is teaching about these dry seasons, but what prayer actually looks like, what his issues were. Like, he talked about the things that he failed and he didn't do right. And I'm like, what? Preachers talk about this? And it started gauging my interest. And then he started, as he talked, there were, I call it now like my download moments. He would talk to things that I was feeling. No one else could know.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know that I feel like this? How do you know this is in my head? And it was like every time I went, there was a God-inspired message just for me. So you can only go so long and without like, okay, God, I don't want you. I don't know. It's like, okay, he's talking to me.
Right.
So does that answer your question?
It does. It does. Because like God was capturing you with the love.
Yes.
And I was thinking about how, I wanted to speak, if you're listening to this podcast and you are experiencing a relationship where you're being abused, whether it's financially, emotionally, physically, or verbally, it's all abuse across the board. Call it what it is. It is what it is. And one of the things that I was thinking about is the beauty of transparency. Also that God is love, and anything outside of love is not God.
Yeah.
And abuse is not love, because when somebody loves you, they don't abuse you, And so anything outside of that is not of God. And so I want for you to be encouraged through this episode, and for you to know that if you are experiencing this, that's not love.
Yeah.
It's I have this once I started learning what healthy love was, it was can you take this test if you take this test, can you tell love in the relationship you're in? Can you insert this person's name? Is such and such patient? Is such and such kind? Is such and such. So I'll use my husband, for example. AJ is patient. AJ is kind. AJ does not envy. AJ doesn't boast. AJ isn't arrogant. Basically, 1 Corinthians 13 is your check mark of, do they fit this? Let me vet them out to see, are they fitting these characteristics beforehand?
Right. Yeah. Do any of you ladies have an experience where you've ever been abused in any type of form?
When you were talking about the children, what happens to the children? There is a family member of ours whose mother was killed by his stepfather when he was 3, and we adopted him, and so we were raised together. And I always wondered, and he's an adult now, but I always wondered, how did that affect him? He was so young, but there were things that he saw. And I just wonder, what decisions has he made, or what things has he repressed, or, how has that affected him? And because it was so young, do people even think that they need to seek out help or counseling or resources if they're like, oh, that happened to me when I was young. It really doesn't matter now. But
so from there's a article USA Today published at the top of the year saying that new research is now starting to show that it does impact kids. And they basically talked about that kids witnessing domestic violence is the lifetime effects are the same as a soldier returning from war. PTSD. And I didn't know that's what that was. So there's certain movies like I can't watch, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't watch them. Like Ike and Tina, I can't watch that.
Yeah.
I can't watch that movie because for me, I lived that. I watched my father beat my mother down like Ike did Tina. So even like the jokes with it, like, no, it's not even funny. And that is a lot of the things that we don't talk about. And so Terry Crews just came out. I was so excited when I heard, I'm not excited obviously, but I was excited to hear a man come out and talk about his earliest childhood memories was of his father beating his mother and the effects of it, of the dreams, the nightmares, the bedwetting. Like he's talking about the effects of it, and that turned into why he had such toxic masculinity, and he had to do the work to heal himself. So now everyone's starting to get a little bit, but less than 15% of people know that this is even an issue.
Yeah. And I think people know, but I think it's more so taboo. Like you said, if whatever happens at home needs to stay at home. And I can't share too much, but I just witnessing examples of that, I can see the effects of how, that can affect someone as an adult, to how you're looking at relationships with men and seeing how that affect, like for me, like, it kind of makes you a little bit more cautious of men after hearing so many stories of things and like of domestic violence. So I have to guard my heart and trust that, like, whatever man God's going to send me, hey, God, I know you're out there listening. I'm just going to shoot that out there, right? Whatever man God sends me, that he's going to be loving and he's going to be perfect and he's going to be perfect for me. You know what I mean? And even from a child's perspective, I think it's important to, like, when we encounter people that may have a lot of rage or may have a lot of anger, that we're not so quick to just write them off, because they could be triggered by something that happened in their childhood that they don't have the open space and availability to talk about. So for me, hearing and learning about this a lot more, it makes me a little bit more sensitive to people who may be struggling with anger issues or whatever type of issues. Like, let's talk like someone at work where they're just a little bit touchy, they're not as friendly. Like, maybe you had a issue as a child where you witnessed some like type of domestic abuse or any type of abuse, and you didn't deal with it, and now you're a grown adult in this workplace that has to interact with all these people. To me, I just think we need to be more conscious and more gracious when we're interacting with people, because you don't know their stories, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes in their head. So to me, I just want, my prayer is that I'm more aware, more sensitive to things that are going on with people that we may not even know about.
Yeah, because that was my story. I was the adult in the corporate boardroom who had issues with male leadership. Like, I was trying to challenge my boss. Yeah. Thank the Lord for his grace.
Yeah.
And he worked with me, but because my father was a leader in our home and I didn't respect him anymore. So now I don't respect men in leadership positions. And I didn't play well with others at corporate either until it was, all right, again, I hit that roadblock where I got to get help. I don't know what this is, but I need help. And that's where the counseling helped me to dive deeper into the roots of what this is and what these issues are going to.
Yeah. And so, I think that some great information that you're sharing with us, and also, making sure that that child heals inside of you is the most important thing, because even myself being a domestic violence survivor, I know that a lot of my actions after those relationships, it was very toxic. I was toxic. And being aware and being honest with yourself is so important. Like, I am attracting these toxic people, but there's a reason I'm attracting these toxic people. And sometimes it's because we're toxic and we're not healing. And so we want to go into the healing process. We want to talk about, what does healing look like after disappointment? What does forgiveness look like after disappointment? Because I think that's where sometimes we stop. We get out of that relationship, but then we're still a mess inside, because there comes a process after that to be free. And so what does that look like for you?
I have a couple questions, Tiffany. The article, because what I just wanted to say was the article about the child survivor, pretty much, like, do they talk about the age that they remember? Because obviously, kind of like Carmen, I don't want to speak too much on it, but my son, who is almost 10 now, will still be like, Mommy, remember that one time my dad made you cry? And I'm like, oh. And I know what time he's talking about, and I'm like, oh, do you remember what happened that day? I'm trying to be all nonchalant about it, because I'm like, I'm not trying to put ideas in his head. I'm not trying to get him to remember if he doesn't remember.
Or trigger anything, yeah.
Right? But then I'm like, wait, is that him baiting me? Like, Mom, I need to talk about this. So I'm kind of wondering, at what age the studies does it show, like, oh, no, they may remember at 2, 3, 4.
So they talk about from the womb. Very young children are totally dependent on their parents. And so in the womb, even if they hear or they feel the effects, it impacts them. And so the exposure reduces the potential of babies and toddlers to learn, because it's essentially rewiring your brain.
Yeah. And, also I want to point out, because you're saying that it starts from the womb, and I went through an abusive relationship when I was pregnant, and I remember getting to a point of so depressed that I would punch my stomach when I was pregnant because I didn't want to bring my son into such a toxic, dark place. And so forgiving yourself as a mother is so important.
Yeah.
Forgiving yourself for the things that you've been through and done and all of that is such an important role. Like the forgiveness for yourself is so important.
Yeah.
It is.
And just pick up where you are now. Give those extra I love yous. Give those extra hugs, those extra bonding moments. Like, again, there's no shame. God doesn't work and operate in a level of shame. Of course. So do not feel shame. And again, because so many people don't know, that's why we're having this conversation. That's why we're talking about it, because once you know, Hosea says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. So the more we start talking about it, the more change we're able to bring to it.
Yeah. And I think that we also have to remember the grace that we have
Yes.
through the Lord.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even if if you're a child and maybe you're an adult now, but as a child, you've gone through that and this may be a bit triggering for you and you're like, whoa, like there are some issues deep down inside that I need to work out. Like there's grace. God's grace is sufficient for you in time of need, and that he will be able to provide you everything that you need to be able to go through that healing process. And if you're not ready to go through it right now, I mean, I totally get it. Just continue to seek God and allow him to walk you through what that looks like. And if you're a mom and, you have a child that maybe witnessed or heard about that, the grace is there for you too. It's okay. You don't have to worry about your child growing up and being this, residual of the situation of what happened. Continue to pray for your children. Continue to pray for those that, and I will too, continue to pray for your children and the folks that may have been affected by that. Because I think, Tiffany, you're a great example of someone who has overcome those tragedies of your youth. You've done the work, and now you're sitting here with us today and sharing your victories and helping other people. So your testimony is helping other people go through this. So this is like such a heavy topic, and I just want people to not be ashamed, not be afraid. If you're going through it right now, like take this as a sign for you to like get the resources that you need. We're going to share some resources, I think at the end of the show, to help you, but God's got you. He's not going to leave you. He's not going to forsake you. Like he has you in his hands right now.
And fears are the enemy as well. And what that process of healing looks like is basically forgiving yourself for your past, but do a search on the character of God in the Bible. You can Google character. I love Google for everything. But you can look scriptures on the character of God, scriptures on forgiveness, scriptures on peace, scriptures on love, and write the ones that stick out to your spirit. Trust me, you'll know there's some scriptures that speak out louder than you may know. Like, that's really ringing in my spirit. Write that down, because if we are made in his image, then those words are true. Personalize that to you. Insert your name in those scriptures, because now you're starting to make a prayer out of it, because now you're praying the word over yourself. Now you're speaking the word over yourself with affirmations. You are now planting seed for God to change, and his word won't come back void. Yes. And again, like exactly what you said, the statistics, I'm not part of the statistics anymore, because I overcame those, and that's what God operates in. And if you look at the Bible, every person that he's used had the background. Every person that he has done great things through had the background, came from families that had dysfunction in it. No one is perfect. So don't put yourself up to that measuring rod that I failed in this area, I can't do it, because he's a redeemer of time.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
And one of the verses that stuck to me heavy was Psalms 119 and 165. Great peace have they who love your law, and nothing can make them stumble. So as I got those scriptures in my heart, as I got those affirmations, that built up my holy confidence. Now I'm done with the Pac. I'm done with the Jay-Z's. I got a Godfidence now. I got the Godfidence now.
The Jehovah, not the Hova.
Right. Exactly. And then from there, write with your ideal self. And these are things that I did. So I'm not talking about nothing that I haven't done. Who are you? Who do you want to be past the hurt, past the pain? Write that person down. And now with those scriptures, align and find more scriptures to write that out. There's a movie, I believe it's Overcomer, that just came out with Priscilla Shirer.
Oh, yeah.
Like I cried through the whole movie.
Y'all go see that, because sometimes Christian movies get a bad rap, and I totally get
This
it.
one
'cause
was
that one was really
amazing.
good.
I
This
haven't
one was
seen it yet.
amazing.
It's good.
I'm gonna
And
have to check
I
it out.
cried because I saw myself in that little girl.
Yeah.
Like I had to go through that process to reclaim my identity. So one of the quotes that my therapist gave me was, airplanes with a lot of baggage can't fly. It's up to you to take your own healthiness into your own hands as it pertains to your mind, soul, and body. What bags do you need to take off your plane?
That's good.
Don't be the bag lady. Like
Don't be
Erykah
the bag
Badu sings.
You gon' hurt
I used to
your
listen to that,
back.
so I'm like, I gotta get these bags off of me, because I was carrying all of that.
Yeah.
And anger was just like, oh, I was always mad, angry at the world. And it's a process. So like,
Yes.
Carmen was saying, give yourself grace. God has extended the grace to you. It is up to us to receive the gift. Grace is a gift.
It
you
is.
can reject it or you can accept it. It's up, that's a decision we have to make.
Yeah.
We have to make a conscious decision to say, God, I receive the grace. I'm receiving this healing power that you're giving me. Holy Spirit, I'm receiving your light. I'm receiving your guidance, your help, because that's what the Holy Spirit is. He's our helper.
Yes.
And so I'm receiving this forgiveness for myself, Lord. Now help me to forgive this person so that I can be free. Because one of the things is, when you learn about yourself, there's so much power in knowing of who you are.
Yes.
And there's so much power in knowing, not just what your potential is, but knowing that God has given you everything you need to reach that thing.
Come on.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's like, okay, if I'm created to worship, how can I worship God if I'm in a toxic place where now I'm blaming God for what is happening to me? Now the enemy is saying, the one that's supposed to love you isn't even existent in that situation, because he wouldn't be doing this if he was God or if he was love, and all of these lies that are spoken over us. So yes, a lot of times we stay in these relationships because we lack wisdom. Wisdom is powerful. Wisdom is the greatest thing that we can have. And so if we lack that wisdom, our soul slowly perishes, slowly but surely. And the enemy works at this every single day. So I'm like, God, the one thing that you created me for is to worship you.
Yeah.
How can I worship you if I'm angry at you?
Right.
I'm not going to worship something I'm angry at.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So receiving that forgiveness and receiving that healing and really truly understanding who you are and what you were actually created for.
Yes.
There's so much power in that.
There is
Yeah.
for sure. You said something about forgiving yourself and then forgiving the other person. So my question for any of us is, what did that process look like if you're at the point where you've forgiven the abuser?
I forgave my dad.
Okay, talk about that.
That was hard.
Yeah.
It took some years, because when you say when you say I forgive them, I don't feel that I forgive them.
Yeah.
And so I have to keep saying I forgive. And it took some years. And then literally I felt I can't explain or pinpoint when the release came, but I found myself reaching out to him more just to see how he's doing. I found myself reaching out to his new wife, trying to mend that broken relationship, as hard as it is, because your feelings don't control you and they shouldn't control you. And I let my feelings control. But in that, I'm showing my family what healing looks like, because I'm still going to go kick it. I'm still going to go and be supportive. I'm still going to tell you I love you, even when you may not feel that, because believe that he's not happy that this is happening, that this is out here.
Yeah.
And regardless of the texts that come my way, I still love you. There's no condemnation. Like, my husband read the text messages that I sent back to him. Like, whatever he threw my way, I hit back with love, because God is love. And if Jesus can forgive the people who crucified him, beat him, said forgive
that
them
is so good.
for they
That
know
part.
not what they do, that's an example. You think Jesus wanted to be beat on?
No.
And he doesn't want that for you either, but he gave us the motto of Jesus felt those beatings too. He felt that pain. He knows what that pain felt like.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that grave, he rose from it. He had all power of heaven and earth in his hands, and he also saved the rest of the world that hell cannot even compete with.
Right.
So I'm walking in that same authority.
Yeah, I was thinking about you as knowing when you were going to be on the episode, and I was praying for you. And I said, God, what if you used Tiffany for her father to repent? I mean, you wrote a book. He's not happy about it. And he's trying to stop you but God is maybe trying to get his attention.
That is my prayer.
Right? Like sometimes we go through stuff and it's so painful, and to relive when you're writing your broken moments, maybe things that you didn't remember and they came up and you're like, whoa, that hurts.
Yeah.
But if we are a vessel for God,
Yeah.
sometimes that journey may look like, hey, I'm going to use you and all that broken thing that you felt, because really ultimately I want him to be with me in heaven.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
See, I got you, Tiffany.
Yeah.
You're saved. I got you.
Yeah.
But I want him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and so we just don't know. There's so much power
Yeah.
in our transparency, and there's so much power in our stories,
Yeah.
to where it's like God always has a bigger plan.
He
Yeah.
does.
I
It
tell
was one of my, go ahead.
I was gonna say my life scripture is Romans 8:28. For we know all things work together for good
Yeah.
to them who love God, to them that are called according to his purpose. And when you stand on that, then you know no matter what happens, and it isn't like God intentionally does, allows bad things to happen to you to do some other thing. We have free will. And
We
so
do.
people
Yeah.
do what they do, and there are consequences that other people feel of those actions.
absolutely.
But when you know that even in the midst of whatever happens, whatever sin people fall into that impacts us, God can still work some good in that when we align to our purpose. And that's the thing. If you don't, if something bad happens, I'm constantly asking, like, okay, what do you want to do with
Yeah.
this? What lesson is there in this for me? What lesson is there in this for someone else? How can I use this to glorify you? What are you going to do with this? And when we find that thing, it's not that it's going to fix it
Yeah.
or erase it, but just knowing, okay, there was a purpose in this pain and it's going to bless somebody else. It definitely cushions the pain.
For sure. And even when you think about forgiveness being a blessing, and I think about my situation and how I had to overcome it to like be able to look at this person often and have to show them the love of Christ. Like the forgiveness that I have to display and that I've displayed is an example. I think someone said it, of how other people can see God through that. So God gets the glory regardless. You know what I mean? So forgiveness is not just for you, and forgiveness is not just for the person, it's for you, but ultimately it's for God to get the glory. And if you can get to the place where you not only forgive yourself, but also forgive the other person, you have to think about of the after effects of people being able to see that, the abuser, like you said, Elisa, being able to be saved, and for God to want them, because God wants us all to be saved. Correct. He wants us all in the kingdom. That's his. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. He wants that for every human being, no matter how crazy, no matter what they've done. So when you have like the mindset of Christ on your life about that, especially when it comes to forgiveness, then it makes it a little bit easier. It's not easy, but it makes it a little bit easier to be able to push through that and really use that forgiveness and know that I'm being a conduit of God's power and what he's doing in my life, and not just for me.
And because all of this is this whole conversation is super heavy and super deep and really good. And I'm just sitting here and I'm absorbing all of this and I'm listening and I'm like, this is so much. I'm thinking about the listener. I'm thinking about you, and I'm thinking about the woman that may be in this situation right now that has children or doesn't have children and may be married, may not be married, may be saved, maybe not saved. And I'm just like, I know you're listening. And I'm like, you have to have so many questions. I'm like, you have to be sitting there, because I'm sitting here and my identity is in Christ, and I am loved by the Lord, and I know that. And I'm still sitting here being like, but how?
Yeah.
How? And I know we don't have a lot of time right now, so I feel like if you have questions, I really want you guys to write us. I feel like if you want us to talk more about this, we want that feedback, because I'm still sitting here thinking about you guys on the couch or in your car and being like, of course I can forgive. I know how to forgive. But how do I do that? How do I get out of this relationship? How do I take my children out of this relationship? How do I put my children to therapy? How do I leave? How am I saved from this? Okay, I don't know the Lord, so that's not my identity. So what now? because all of you ladies are saved and you're talking about your identity. I'm just like super overwhelmed about this whole conversation for you guys, for the listener. And I want there to be resolution, even though I know, okay, in an hour podcast, there may not be resolution, but I just have this like heaviness on my heart to where I'm like, I know you have questions, because even when I was in the situation and I was like backslidden for 12 years in college, and I was in the relationship, and then I went back into the relationship, and then, okay, of course I can forgive myself because I know the Lord, but I know I'm kind of rambling, but I'm just like, I just feel like this is so much that I don't want you to listen to this and feel hopeless at all. I want you to feel like, I want you to have hope, and I don't want you to think, okay, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to do this tomorrow. I don't know. I don't know. That's
good. Yeah.
Tiffany. Thank you for bringing it up.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing it up. You're not rambling at all. It makes perfect sense. And the first thing is, one, if you're in it, you have to be very careful.
Okay.
You have to be careful. One of the biggest questions are, why don't they just leave? It's not just easy to just up and leave. It's one of those 77% of women are killed when they try to leave. Like, my mom is a walking miracle today. So it's one of those where you're like, I didn't see God answer the prayer. He did answer prayer, because we asked for the beatings to stop, and we asked that she made it out alive. She did. It wasn't in what we thought it would be. We thought it would be happy family again, but it wasn't. But it took careful strategic planning. It took those various people covering her and in prayer. It took her researching out. So and thankfully the technology has evolved from now versus back then, where there's an app called Are You Safe? And it is for if you are in it, or if you know somebody who might be in it. It's a free app. You download it and you can answer questions, and it gives you guidance what to do. It gives you resources. There's also a tech safety app, because now the other thing is perpetrators can also track you with check-ins, your phones. There's so many ways they can use. There's an app that coaches you on those things. So it's one of those, within that Are You Safe app, it gives you safety planning as well. It is one of those where if you are in it and you have children, talk to your children, because they see it. It's happening. Ask them how they feel. If they don't talk about how I feel, research, Google different ways you can connect with them to have it out. It may come out in drawings. It may come out, and when they're playing in their free time, just pay more attention. Give them those extra hugs. I wanted more hugs from my mom. That's what I mainly wanted. I just hug my teddy bear all the time. But it's it's the little things. Like, we think we have to have a big plan to address the kids. It's the little things, because they don't know what they're seeing. They don't know how to process or communicate this trauma that they're witnessing. So from there's womenslaw.org that tells you your legal rights. If you want to get out, you explore your options. Every state has a coalition. So for Arizona, there's the Arizona Coalition Against Domestic Violence. You're able to call them. You're able to look up the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Like, you can find out these resources. And if you need to talk to me, Tiffany Mensah, author, on Facebook, Instagram, Tiffany Mensah, author at gmail.com, TiffanyMensah.com. Like, I will answer your questions one-on-one if you need them to.
Yeah, and Tiffany mentioned earlier that her father also used financial abuse. So again, I know we talked a lot about physical abuse, but verbal, emotional, like, those are real, and we haven't touched. That's why I feel like there's so much, because we haven't really touched on those. But I mean, if we talk about the word, and it says that life and death are in the power of the tongue, death. Like, verbal, emotional abuse is real.
Yes.
It's real, because your perpetrator also makes you feel as though, well, if you say something, who's gonna believe you? I'm a good guy. From the outside, we look like your perfect family. We look like the Cosby Show up front, but behind the scenes, it was just horror and terror behind. So who's gonna believe you? It's called gaslighting. It's a psychological way to get in your head, where, again, they're putting that fear in your spirit where you're afraid to move. And some may be afraid to leave because, again, I just told you that stat about that house. What's going to happen to my kid? What's going to happen to me? So it is a lot of, like you said, the verbal aspect goes to it too. And it's not just, and I also want to say this too, it's not just women. It is men being abused as well.
Absolutely.
But they won't talk about it because of the fact that I'm a man, I'm supposed to. Yeah. Women are verbally abusive a lot to men. Like, I've seen it happen in plenty of situations. Yes. So we also want to make sure that if there's men listening too, like, you are also included in this bucket as
Absolutely.
well. And it is guarding your tongues, guarding your heart. But this is why the importance of driving awareness, because awareness adds to prevention.
Yep.
So if I know these signs, if I know these red flags, then I'm not going to date this type of person, or let me not even get that deep in.
Single ladies,
because
listen.
once I get in, because if I get in and don't let me add sex to it, there's some soul ties that's also connected to it as well, and now it's even more deeper. So the more you educate yourself, the more you become to know what the different phases are. You're able to prepare yourself accordingly. You're able to be guarded. And it's not to say to walk around in fear, because again, the enemy, fear comes from the enemy, but you have to be aware. You have to be aware. And
Awareness is key.
absolutely.
Yeah,
It
and just one thing to add, let's say you are listening and you want to be an ally to a friend or a sister or somebody that you know that's going through the process. Just be present and don't get frustrated if they go back.
Yes.
You know,
say that again.
Yeah, you can't control a person. You can't control their actions or what they do. What you can do is be present. Don't get to the point where you're like, I'm sick of this. They're going to keep going. I don't know what to do anymore. Be present. If you're a believer, pray and allow the Holy Spirit to lead you where you need to go. Always have a safe space for them. Call the cops if something needs to be documented, if it's a physical abuse, if it's verbal abuse, reaffirm that person with what you know about them to be true. It's like we talked about with the identity episode. Lies are coming from you left and right from the enemy using people to put those lies on you. Reaffirm that person of who they are, who you know them to be, and just be as supportive as you can, but don't give up on that person, because you never know, like, they might need you in the worst time, and the worst thing that you can do is to just let it go.
My mom left 8 to 9 times before she finally divorced my father. And she kept going back and forth because of the finances.
Right.
Or somebody would give her location away. Now I'm scared he might kill me. So let me go ahead and play nice, make up with him and go back for it to start. And then it was, again, she was a homemaker for 30 years and was like, I can't provide for these kids. Let me go back to that. So you never know the circumstances surrounding it. So it's all about compassion, and it's never as easy as, well, why she going back? Why she with him? The ultimate question is, why does the abuser abuse?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
That's the root of it. And so you asked about kind of some little examples. So some examples are, if you were with a guy and he's like, I need to look through your phone so I can know I can trust you. That's a red flag. Let me call you names.
Carmen's over here.
Because your opinion is different from mine. I'm getting extremely jealous at you because you around your family and friends too much. Why you're calling my phone every 5 minutes because I'm out? You know I'm out with family and you keep calling me. You are rushing into the relationship. You want to hurry up and do this and do that, but I'm not comfortable at the pace this is going, and you won't respect my boundaries, and you're becoming more and more aggressive. Do they lose their temper instantly? Are they destructive? Are they accusatory? Do they ignore your wishes and make decisions for you? Or do they try to buy you to apologize? Because my dad was good for buying my mom the best diamonds, necklaces, furs, cars to make up for the beatings. So the red flags are there. And if you see a red flag, instantly address it, and don't think I can fix him. I can pray this out. I can get him in church. I can change him. That's not your job. Because at the end of the day, the man that God has for you, because he knew you before you were in your mother's womb, he knew the man that he had for you. So if you see any of this stuff, that ain't of God.
God is love.
God is love.
Yes.
And I didn't know I could have a health, because that's one of the statistics. And when you watch it, you don't think you can have a healthy love. I didn't think I could have a healthy love. But like you said, you were toxic. I was toxic. I had to get those behaviors out. I had to take a 5-year purity celibacy before I met my husband, because I'm a bad picker at this point. And I'm also ain't worked these issues out. I was trying to be wifey, but I wasn't ready to be a wife at the end of the day until I got healed and whole. Yeah. And now I have a husband, thank the Lord, who is completely opposite of what my father is. And I can be able to be vulnerable. I remember telling my counselor, I can't be vulnerable with these dudes. Like, this is an issue. And he was like, the right man will be able to handle your vulnerability. Yeah. The right man will love you like the healthy model that Jesus love talks about in Ephesians. How Christ loves the church. That's what the marriage is supposed to look like.
Amen.
One of the things you also mentioned too was that about my father. And I know that you talk about questions. Some people may have, he's a preacher and I want to stay out of church because of this. At the end of the day, there's still a title, that he is still a man.
Yep.
He is still a man. That does not change God's goodness.
Yep.
That does not change. He needs that prayer even more. And because he knows the word more, he's going to have to deal with God on a whole nother level that most people wouldn't. But that is why those prayers of grace covers, and why it's just, hey, I can forgive you and be distant. Just because I forgive you doesn't mean that I have to be back in your face and accept the verbal abuse that you give. I can forgive you and keep it moving, walk in love. Good day.
That's good. We know that this is a heavy topic, but we want to make sure that we're spreading awareness and we're talking about what's difficult, because when you can face yourself, that's where that process of healing comes in, is being honest with yourself first. And so, we thank you so much, Tiffany, for being on this show.
Yes, thanks, Tiffany.
On this episode.
Yes.
Your story is so powerful and we cannot wait to read your book. But if someone wants to read your book, buy your book, whatever, give us a little bit of information on that.
TiffanyMensah.com is my website. Pre-orders is set up. You can go on and order accordingly. You want to contact me, send me a DM. Again, Tiffany Mensah, Facebook, Instagram, the author page. So, yeah.
Spell your name for us too.
I was just going to say.
a great idea.
You're saying Mensa, like everybody's going to know.
Tiffany
Jones.
TiffanyMensah.
Perfect.
Perfect.
That's awesome.
Yes. And what about some music? Like, let's talk a little bit about music, what got us through.
Yeah.
And some songs. We all like music.
Yeah.
Music is fun.
And you talked about that, how music, whether it was the negative music, but music is a powerful force.
Ultimately, I ended up joining that church because of their concerts, their worship department. They ministered a new sound for me. And one of the main songs was He Knows My Name by Torrance Green. Then there was Israel's album, Another Level.
Yeah.
Ministered to my heart. I Am God and Restoring the Years by Donald Lawrence. Kirk Franklin's Fight of My Life. Kirk Franklin, Imagine Me. And I also have a playlist on
Imagine
iTunes.
That was
My
great.
song.
Yeah, I also have a playlist on iTunes called You Are Not Forgotten, because my book is called Forgotten, because it talks about those children who are forgotten in the shadows of domestic violence. But I did create a playlist because I want you, the listener, and those who read the book, to be able to go back to, if you need to hear these songs, that is speaking word, that is speaking new identity, that is speaking to where you want to have hope in your situation. There is a playlist that is public that you can listen to.
It's on the website.
It is on the website.
Nice.
Oh, I love that.
TiffanyMensah.com.
Yes.
I really like that song by Tasha Cobbs, Break Every Chain. Because it's like we're learning, like, there's power in the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
And that really gets into your soul. And it's like you start to believe, okay, there's power there. And then we start to use his name and we see that chains are breaking when we do that. And so I really, really love that song. But Imagine Me by Kirk Franklin, that song, I think I listened to that song every day when I first got saved.
Yeah.
like,
It got me through my senior year of high school, which is weird, but
Stop. Y'all making me feel old.
I know. Yeah, for whoever said that we were like super old. I mean, we might be old for you, but we're not that old. I know. But yeah, it got me through my senior year. I love that song. That whole album, okay? Kirk's pen is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I like to focus on songs that go back to the resurrection. Like for me, that just does it. Like when I just think about the ultimate sacrifice that Jesus made, and that just gets me together. So What a Beautiful Name is like one of my favorites. I love to sing that song. There's a song called Hope's Anthem by Bethel Music. Anything Bethel will get you together. Let me tell you. Yeah, I think those are anything that's like resurrection focused. King of My Heart by Bethel, that gets me going. Music's powerful. This is my quiet time playlist, and it just gets me together when I'm going through a difficult time, when I just need my mind to get focused back on God and to renew my mind in that way. Like worship will get you all the way together. We should talk about that.
Yeah. I really love Lauren Daigle's newest song, Rescue. It's funny, I'll be in the front seat and my son Apollo will be like, are you crying to this song again? And I'm like, I mean, and it's not even like I feel like I need to be rescued right now, but that song still takes me back to when he did have to rescue me. I mean, like, it's pretty much God singing to you. Like, I hear your SOS. That is a line in it. Like, I see you in the darkest night. Like, it really is. Especially, I thought it was perfect for this topic, this episode. Like, he hears you, he sees you, and he is going to rescue you. Like, oh, it's and Lauren Daigle's beautiful.
Her whole album is great. If you haven't listened to it,
yeah.
All right, so I got to go back to like early 2000s for some of my favorites. I love Shekinah Glory Ministries. And two of the songs that really get me through are Yes. I used to listen to Yes I still do. It's still on my morning playlist. I listen to every single morning. And also Praise Is What I Do.
Praise is what I do. Sorry.
I'm not hitting that note. You see, normally I'll jump in there, but I'm not even going to do that to y'all listeners.
Karaoke as our next outing. Yes.
Do we though?
Yes, we do. If we went axe throwing, we got to do karaoke. Okay. That would be fun.
That is yeah, y'all might listen at your own risk when I start singing. I love In the Midst of It All by Yolanda Adams. That was another one that got me through. It Ain't Over by Marette Brown Clark. More Than Anything by Lamar Campbell. Oh, I love that song.
I love all these songs. Are we going to put these on our Facebook page?
That's a good idea.
That would be good.
Do that.
We got the thumbs up. We're doing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm trying to think of like some, I hate to use the word secular, but some secular songs. Maybe if you don't listen to Christian music yet, that's okay.
India Arie.
Yeah. Oh, yes. What is that album?
so good. I love that song, Sacred Place. Her album, Worthy.
Yeah, and the two
good.
before the Songversations, there's
That
like Songversations
one.
1 and 2.
Yes.
And the second one is so beautiful.
There's a song called I Am Light.
That's on my morning
Yes.
playlist too. That's
that
on
one
there too.
is a great one.
And God Is Real
Yes.
from that album. That's a bomb
Come on,
album.
India.
Right?
She's really good.
I feel like whether it's secular or Christian, just make sure that it's not fueling the anger.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Whenever I would get mad at my ex, I'd be like, watch me listen to the entire soundtrack of Waiting to Exhale.
Oh, dang.
Oh, Lord.
You about to come home to this.
The anger, the depression.
Come on,
that
Angela
always
Bassett.
means-
Yeah, I think I even had a moment
your
where like
stuff
the
up.
cigarette, and I had that moment too.
Mary J. Blige, I'm going down playlist. Get
so
rid of
exactly
it.
what Tiffany was talking about earlier with, she said Jay-Z and Tupac, but I was feeding the anger. So we want to obviously go beyond that and listen, whether again it said secular or Christian, though, that it's lifting
It's
us
uplifting.
up and
Yes.
it's doing something for change and not
Yeah.
for anger.
Even if it's like just some upbeat music that you just got to dance your way out. I know I've been there where I have to dance my way out of some things.
Absolutely.
Turn on some Beyonce, Get Me Bodied, and I just dance my
Right.
way out of my
Beyonce.
out of my little sad moment right there. You know what I mean? So what?
And even Christian rap has come a long way.
It
like
has.
Andy
Baby.
Mineo,
Yes,
Lecrae.
it has.
There's a lot of positive
Bizzle.
music out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Happy by Pharrell.
Oh, yeah.
You can't be like that. One
No.
gets you going,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
good
So
one.
we wanted to just share some of our favorites to help encourage you. Like if it's secular, non-secular, whatever's encouraging you, hey, we're all for it.
All right. So looks like we are at the end of our show. We just want to thank you guys for listening so much. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Clear Talk Show, and then also email us at cleartalk@gmail.com. We want to hear from you guys. So if you have any stories, if you need more resources, if you need something from us, please reach out to us. And until next time, we're really excited, guys. Let's be clear.
Let's be clear.